Hey there, vinyl community. I know this is my first actual video of 2023, but this one's worth the wait, so stay tuned. Hey there everyone, so I know I haven't made videos in a while, been a little bit of a hiatus. I've been finishing up this guy right here, but it's done now. I'm done with all that, so back to making a little bit of vinyl related content, and I have a good occasion to make a video because recently I walked into a pretty big vinyl store. You know, something that doesn't always happen to me that often. I know a lot of people that find crazy stuff at, you know, thrift stores or underpriced at record stores. And, you know, I have good finds now and then, usually classical because nobody knows what to do with classical. But this was just overall a good find. So here in Arizona, there's a local chain of record stores called Zia Records. And, you know, they've been around for a long time. And they have kind of a, you know, I would say a younger clientele and also a younger staff with higher turnover. And most of the stuff they deal in is current releases, indie bands, rock bands, metal, hip hop, things like that. So it's not really a collector's store. And because they don't have the knowledge base of a collector's store, the pricing is sometimes a little varied. I've seen stuff there that is wildly overpriced. I've run into a few things there that are very underpriced just because, you know, the people that work there that are pricing, A, they go through a lot of stuff, but B, the stuff they're looking at, they don't necessarily know how to tell what they're looking at all the time. So recently on a whim, I just decided to stop at one of the local Zias here in town, and I stumbled upon quite the find of a wide variety of records. So I want to show you some of those now. And the new arrivals bin first, this is not a rare record or anything I'm like crazy excited about, but Castavet, The Echo and the Light. This is a band I used to see in like late high school, early college, that I would see in like the underground DIY emo, you know, kind of math rock basement scene. And I can't even remember where I've seen this band, but I have seen this band play live. And I don't think I own any of their stuff on vinyl. So I saw this sitting in the new arrivals bin. I went, I need to have a blast from the past. So that's not, you know, no one on this channel is going to know who Castavet are, I don't think. But, you know, I'm going to enjoy reliving my glory days listening to this. But that's not what I would call the score. These are records I would call the score. So I was digging around in their classical bin, which is this little tiny section of shelving underneath the main shelves, mostly filled with dollar bin records. But stumbled across this guy. Felix Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream, conducted by Peter Maag and the London Symphony Orchestra. This is a London blueback, but it's not just any London blueback, it's a stamped radio promotion, London blueback. And it's a UK pressed London with the first pancake label, pancake pressing. If you've watched my Decca video, you will know that this is the earliest possible label. This pancake, they call it a pancake pressing because unlike most of the deep groove with the wide groove around here, most of the deep groove wideband pressings you'll see on Decca, the pancakes were only in the early catalog numbers. The first pressing gets the pancake pressing, which is all the way flat except for a tiny ridge around here. So this is the first pressing of a very early Decca, and it is dead mint. I mean, looks like it's never been played. This was probably a promo copy that someone got sent and it never left the shelf. Pristine. So this is actually a fairly collectible record. They had it priced at $20, which they probably thought, no one's going to pay $20 for a classical record, Zia Records. But this record in this condition, with this original UK pressing, is worth about $100. So that was score number one. Just beautiful sound. I'm going to have a good time listening to this and also comparing it to the reissue I have of this, and you'll notice this is CS 6001. This is technically the first of the London catalog numbers. I'm going to have a good time listening and comparing it to the reissue I have that was cut by Bernie Grunman, this double 45 ORG original recording group reissue cut by Bernie Grunman from the original tapes on his all-tube system. Most people don't know about these ORG double 45s of the London catalog. It seems like they went under the radar. But it sounds great. This sounds great, so I know it's a great recording. But this is the original. I wonder which one I'll enjoy more. For another video. But I found one other London Blueback in the bins there. I wish there were more. I wish I could have said I found a whole collection of them, but I just found two. And this is Ataulfo Argenta conducting Halfter's Sinfonietta. This is another rare one. So the key thing to point out about this record, this is another London Blueback, is that this is one of the couple records that Ataulfo Argenta cut for Decca, and all of his records that he did with Decca in stereo are very collectible. Part of the reason being he was a up-and-coming conductor, Spanish conductor, who was known for his interpretations of contemporary Spanish music. There were a lot of comparisons drawn to Leonard Bernstein in the US and Arturo Toscanini earlier in Italy for being kind of a champion of his country's music and being one of the big musical personalities in Spain in the post-war years. He's also very well known because his life was tragically cut short in 1958 at the age of only 44 years old when he was coming back from a party with one of his students, possibly a lover. And the story goes that the apartment upstairs was cold, and so they wanted to let it warm up in the car. And so they ran the heater in the car in a closed garage in the 1950s. So Argenta died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and his student that he was with was found unconscious, but fortunately is still alive. You know, the career of a promising young artist and excellent recording artist was cut short. But before he died, he recorded a number of great early stereo records for Decca. Excellent sounding records, excellent interpretations. This Sinfonietta by Halfter this is a modern, contemporary, for that time, Spanish composer, and the Sinfonietta is a neoclassical piece. And one I'm not super familiar with. I think I've heard this once before, so I'm excited to give it another listen. This is likewise a stamped radio promo. The pressing is, while it is the first label, it's the first London wideband label pressed in England, it is not the pancake pressing, it's the normal deep groove pressing that you see more commonly. Those pancake pressings really are only available on the very, very first couple catalog numbers of Decca. This is CS 6029. And of course, as I've said before in my videos, these London Bluebacks, these London Deccas, if they're pressed in England, they are sonically identical to the UK Deccas that usually command a lot more money. There is a mythology promoted out there among some people that the Londons are sonically inferior to the British Deccas. The truth is they were the same records pressed at the same factories in England, the same stampers. You can look at the dead wax and you'll find the same dead wax throughout in the UK and the US market copies. The reason why the Londons were called Londons is because the British Decca company did not have the rights to use the name Decca in the United States. There was a different Decca record company that used to be part of Big Decca that they broke apart during World War II. And so that company had the rights to use the name Decca in the United States. And so Decca in England had to go, okay, how are we going to sell our records in the United States if we don't own the name Decca? Well, they made new jackets, printed new jackets in the U.S. for these records. They called the series London, and they sent over the records, put labels and new jackets on them, and sold them as London pressings. But they are pressed in England at the same Decca factories. Just as long as it says "Made in England," it's the same. This London record, still rare and pricey. This condition, it's worth about $100, and again, I think this one was $25. So I paid $25 for a $100 record, and I would call that a win, and I can't wait to listen to this. But that's not all. There was more. So after I got done in the classical section, I didn't find anything else good there. I went over to something, did the Vinyl Guru start this? The Holy Moly Wall? Now I've started calling it that, the Holy Moly Wall, the wall where they put the rare records up. There were a couple things up there that caught my eye. One of which was this. Nat King Cole sings songs from St. Louis Blues, the film. This is one of the many Nat King Cole reissues that Analog Productions did in around 2010, 2011. And this is a double 45. I think this was mastered by, I don't remember. I think this was mastered by Hoffman and Gray, I'm pretty sure, at Acoustech. I am not confident, though. Someone correct me down in the comments. But I have a few of these Nat King Cole reissues that Analog Productions did. They all sound really good, but this one sounds a large step above the rest, and I think it's because the type of music that this is more big band music. It's film soundtrack music, so there's more percussion, there's more instruments. It's a more energetic, dynamic sound than a lot of the more mellow Nat King Cole records that they did. So this is going to become a reference album for me, for sure. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, incredible. And I got this for much, much less than what it's going for on Discogs. They really underpriced this, and it's completely near mint. But wait, there's more. So there were two more records left on the Holy Moly Wall that caught my eye. One of which is something that's been in my want list for a while, and that is, an album probably most of you know, Rage Against the Machine's 1992 self-titled album. But this is the original US Epic Records pressing, mastered and cut by Robert Ludwig, a master disc. I'll show you the label here. Original Epic label. I played this already. I knew it's well known to be a audiophile album, and one of the few examples of a really, really true modern heavy rock, hard rock audiophile album. This is reference quality. I've heard good pressings of this album before. I have the music on vinyl pressing that was pressed from the original European stampers. That sounds good. This sounds much, much, much better. And despite the fact that when I was a teenager, I loved Rage Against the Machine. I idolized that band. I was very into the music and very into the message. And the thing is, I think as I've gotten older. Well, one is I've gotten older, which, your worldview changes when you get older. It happens to everyone. But the second thing is, I live in an age where now I can look up the things that Rage Against the Machine were actually talking about, and it's kind of soured me on the experience a little bit because, a lot of people like to project Rage Against the Machine as a band promoting, revolutionary ideas and social justice, and it's not always quite that simple. The opening title on this album, Bomb Track, which musically is an excellent track, they made a music video for this track that's still up on their YouTube channel today, dedicated entirely to Abimael Guzman, the leader of Peru's Shining Path. And if you don't know who the Shining Path are, they're basically the Latin American equivalent of the Khmer Rouge. They were a brutal paramilitary terrorist organization that slaughtered thousands and thousands of innocent civilians, including pogroms of LGBT people, or they killed hundreds of queer people just for being queer, because they were that was bourgeois lifestyle, anti-revolutionary. They killed peasants that didn't want to join their cause. They would do indiscriminate bombings in cities. If you tell a person from Peru that you're pro-Shining Path, they're likely to spit in your face or worse. And Rage Against the Machine have been outspokenly supportive of them. And it's something that, you don't even think about until one day you look it up and you go, oh, really? And no one's brought this up? Not to mention kind of the more the less serious but still more kooky stuff that they've been involved in, like Tom Morello selling NFTs, or their bass player, whose name I forget, being a crazy moon landing conspiracy theorist and trying to fight Buzz Aldrin on the street because he's convinced the moon landing was a government psyop. It prevents me from having fun with this music like I used to. It's still great music. I mean, Rage Against the Machine were, in my opinion, the only successful fusion of hip hop and heavy metal that I've ever heard. I mean, there's other bands have tried, and other bands have done it admirably, but I would say that they really were the only ones to do it masterfully. Is to fuse hip hop and heavy metal. A lot of other bands tried and failed. I mean, the entire 90s is littered with the failed careers of bands that tried to be rap metal bands. And I think Rage Against the Machine did it really well. It's just, you can't really relish them. I can't relish them the way I used to. Maybe you can. I don't know. But for me, now this is like, this used to be, yeah, Rage Against the Machine, they're so awesome. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome, but it's kind of like owning a Burzum record. And I mean, yeah, I do own a couple Burzum records, just like I own a couple Rage Against the Machine records. Both, great pieces of art made by people pushing very scummy political messaging, I would say. But despite that, I think this is still a great piece of music, and I'm going to hang on to it because it sounds so good. Robert Ludwig's mastering of this is... I have never heard a metal album sound so good as an audiophile reference. I mean, I've streamed this album in high res. Again, I have the pretty good sounding music on vinyl pressing, but nothing. I mean, to me, this is like the sonic equivalent of like hearing an RL Led Zeppelin 2 for the first time. Really astounding. So I'm really happy I picked this up. It's not an amazing shape, but this record's cut so hot, so loud that you really only hear static in between songs anyway. But of all those finds, nothing really compares to the last thing I found on the Holy Moly wall. And that is this guy right here. This is an original mono Riverside of Bill Evans' Portrait in Jazz. And not only is it an original mono Riverside, it's an original first label mono Riverside. You'll notice that on the section where it says Bill Grauer Productions, there is no ink after the Bill Grauer Productions. That is how you know that it is a true first label, is they added the ink in all subsequent mono pressings. But in the very, very, very first label, it's just Bill Grauer Productions. This is an original deep groove label. Now it's not near mint. It's not even VG plus. It's VG. It's a strong VG because it's you have to remember it's a mono record, so a lot of the noise you're not going to hear. And I played it through on my system, and yeah, well. So I have a stereo cart, and I have no mono button on my system, so it's not a mono focus system. And yeah, it was noisy, but the instrument sounded great. The pressing sounded great. But check that guy out. So this was sitting on the wall for $75. And, I had no idea what an original of this went for, and I started looking it up, and I started looking at the label. And I talked to, one or two of my jazz collector friends, and I realized, oh shit, I need to buy this. Because even in this condition, which is VG condition, this is, a $300 to $400 record. In this condition. If this was near mint, I'm sure I'd what are these going for, like $900, $1,000 in near mint condition? Yeah. So this is by far one of the best, definitely the best jazz find I've ever had in a record store or anywhere. And probably is in terms of what I paid versus what it's worth. Yeah, this is probably one of the bigger stumbles into a great record that I've had, because again, I paid $75 for it. I've played this a couple times now, and it sounds really good, but I don't think I'm probably not going to hang on to it just because I don't have a dedicated mono setup, and I think this deserves to be owned by someone, A, with a great mono setup, and B, who's a really passionate early jazz collector, because I'm not. I buy the reissues because I think they're great sounding. I don't dabble in early jazz pressings that much, but a lot of people do. So I think I'm going to sell this one. It'll help pay for all the other records I bought on this trip. So if you're interested at all in this, send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram. I already did put it up for sale on the Hoffman forums, and let it sit there for a while for people in the kind of closer knit community, and then if it doesn't sell, then I'll put it up on Discogs. But I'm going to enjoy having it around until then, because this is kind of a piece of jazz history. It's a wonderful album. It's been a while since I really listened to this album in depth. So, yeah. Portrait in Jazz, definitely my find of the year. So moving on from that, for those that are living under a rock, Record Store Day is on Saturday. And I think for the first time in 9 years, I'm actually going to participate in Record Store Day, because there's some titles I actually am really excited about. And for a long time, the list of Record Store Day titles hasn't really inspired me to get out and, get up early, wait in the lines and everything. But I think this year I'm going to do it, because there's a lot of cool stuff that is going to be released. A lot of exclusive stuff that's going to be released. And that's kind of the reason to do Record Store Day is, there's a few things that are going to be first, but they'll be available eventually. But a lot of these are going to be Record Store Day exclusives. So let me know what your list for Record Store Day this year is. But I'm just going to share with you mine real quickly. One of the first records I'm going to be looking for is the one that this is probably going to be the most difficult one to snag, and that is Chet Baker's Chet mono reissue. This is a Kraft Recordings reissue. The stereo one's been out for a couple years, but for Record Store Day they're doing a reissue with a mono title. This one is cut by Kevin Gray, and it's going to be out of 6,525. So for the amount of demand that there's going to be for this one, that's not a lot of copies out there. So I hope I can snag one. The next title I'm really, really excited about is Horse the Band's 2005 album, The Mechanical Hand. No full-length Horse the Band records are out on vinyl, have ever been released on vinyl, so I'm so excited that they're finally going to reissue one. This is one of my favorite bands of the 2000s, one of my favorite bands of all time. Such an interesting kind of alternative, alt-metal, alt-hardcore band that was just way ahead of their time, I think, active in the mid and late 2000s. I saw them twice when they were around originally, and both times it was one of the best shows I've ever been to. They're such a good live band, and they toured relentlessly. When I saw them in 2009, they were touring on their final studio album, A Natural Death, and they had just gotten done with a 40-country, 4-month world tour funded almost entirely on credit card debt. And when I say world tour, I don't just mean they went to North America and Europe. I mean, they started in California, went to Australia, Japan, China, not just Beijing and Shanghai too, like all over China, Russia, Belarus. They were the first American heavy metal band to play in Belarus since like Megadeth. Israel, Turkey. I mean, they did the whole gamut. 4 months. And it was like, and it was 4 months in like a van. 4 months in like cheap flights in a van. If you want to know more about that, they call it the Earth Tour. They made a 10-hour documentary about it. It's up on YouTube for free. If you ever, have a day when you're sick in bed and need something to watch that's 10 hours long, I highly recommend it. I would call it a quasi-religious experience. Anyway, this is one of my favorite bands, and I've wanted their stuff on vinyl for the longest time. So even though this is not an exclusive, this is an RSD first. They're just doing for 2,000 copies for Record Store Day, and then I'm sure they're going to be doing a full release of it. Man, I'm such a fan of this band that I got to get the Record Store Day first edition. Next, Mars Volta are releasing the Francis the Mute EP single. Is a Record Store Day exclusive. This has been out of print for a long time, and they're reissuing it along. They've done reissues of their back catalog now through Clouds Hill, and those reissues sound very good, even though they're not all analog reissues. They are well done reissues of the Mars Volta back catalog. And this one's going to be out of 6,750. So I don't know how in demand it's going to be, but I'm definitely on the lookout for it because this is to me like golden age, golden era Mars Volta, like that era of the band from Deloused and the Comatorium all the way through Bedlam and Goliath for me is like prime Mars Volta. I will listen to anything they made in that little short span of time. Next is the RSD exclusive. I'm really excited to see if I can get my hands on Our Lady Pieces Collected 2 LP compilation set. The main reason I'm interested in this is I'm a big Our Lady Peace fan. They're one of the bands I've been listening to for the longest. I've been listening to this band since I was in like 6th or 7th grade. They were one of the first like rock bands I got really into. And they have a very underrated catalog, especially their albums from the 90s and early 2000s, I think are hugely underrated alternative rock albums. But the main reason I'm interested in this compilation is it's got a couple older unreleased tracks on it that I'm very curious to hear. So that'll be really exciting. And this one's out of 2,500, but I feel like there's not going to be a ton of demand for it, so I think I'll be able to get it pretty easily. One that I'm kind of on the fence about because I think it's going to be pricey is that Eric Dolphy Musical Prophet. This one is actually it's a 3 LP set, but it's out of 2,000, so it might be hard to find. But that one is mastered by Kevin Gray, so I don't think it's all analog, but it should sound really good. And who doesn't love some kind of avant-garde jazz bass clarinet? I know I do. Also on my radar is the Blur Special Collector's Edition, that compilation of B-sides that used to be a Japan-only release. That's getting reissued out of 10,000, so it should be fairly common. I don't know if I'm going to pick this one up, but it sounds kind of interesting, and it is an RSD exclusive. And then the last one I'm interested in is one that Jose Marino Ram, another Vinyl Community member, kind of plugged me into. He said, "Hey man, check this out. Like you should grab this on Record Store Day." And it's Crispin Helian Glover's "The Big Problem, Not the Solution." Crispin Helian Glover, you might know, is that actor known for playing all the weirdos in some of those Hollywood movies. I think the big one he was in, he played the Thin Man in the old Charlie's Angels movie from the 2000s with Cameron Diaz. And in the 80s, apparently, he made like a weird avant-garde kind of spoken word album. Sounds like something out of a Tim Burton movie. I listened to it. It's really funky and really weird. And it's never been reissued on vinyl. The original pressing of it is unobtainium, and they're making 2,000 copies of this one. So if I run into this, I think I'm going to get it because it's so weird and so cool, and I think I'll kick myself if I don't go ahead and pick it up. So those are my picks for Record Store Day this year. Tell me about what you're looking for, where you're going to be spending your Record Store Day. I think I'm probably going to be one of those poor saps lined up at the In-Groove nice and early on Saturday because I have a gig in the afternoon and evening, so I'm going to have to hit the record store nice and early. If you're going to the In-Groove and you see me, feel free to say hi. I'll probably be in Concert Black. With that, I think that's all I wanted to get through, so I will see you all for the next video. Cheers.